Confederate forces surrendered to Union forces in Appomattox Court House, Virginia in April 1865. But many people in Texas were still living under slavery. The Emancipation Proclamation went into effect in January of 1863 in places under Union control. But Union forces didn't arrive to enforce emancipation in Texas until June 1865. That is why we celebrate Juneteenth today, to recognize the day that those enslaved in Texas were finally freed. And although Juneteenth is the most famous holiday recognizing emancipation, many communities held their own celebrations after the end of the Civil War. From Connecticut Public Radio, this is Disrupted. I'm Kalila Brown-Dean. This hour, we recognize Juneteenth by taking a look at celebrations of the past and present. Later in the show, we hear from one of the organizers of this year's celebration in New Haven. But up first, we look at the history of Emancipation Days and how they've been documented. Dr. Blair L. M. Kelly is president and director of the National Humanities Center. She's author of a number of books, including Black Folk, The Roots of the Black Working Class. Her latest book is Black Freedom, A Visual History of Juneteenth and Emancipation Days. Professor, it's wonderful to have you on Disrupted.
I am thrilled to be able to talk with you today and really honored to talk about a project that just is exciting me in this moment.
Before we talk about this project and this stunning book, because we get a lot of books on this show, this is one that the minute I got it in my hands, I had to read it and go through all the beautiful images, and beautiful not just in terms of being pretty images, because some are hard to see, but beautiful in terms of a reminder and really a call to that. Before we talk about the book, I want to talk about you as an historian and as the person who's created this work. We talk a lot on this show about history, about what history can teach us, about the ways that we can be corrected and guided by history. You know, we recently had John Meacham and Jill Lepore talking about lessons from history. I'm curious about you, because of your life work. What is it about history that calls you into not just this profession, but really this practice of being an historian? What is it about history that speaks to you?
I think it's powerful to understand where we sit in the world. So often we are very presentist as a country. We are responding to the thing directly in front of us. We have a short memory as a culture. And sometimes we have a hard time sitting with difficulties and uncomfortable spaces. And for me, history allows us into a way of seeing through the difficulties, of seeing the humanity of our ancestors, of understanding exactly how we tripped up and got into these strange conundrums we sometimes do, and sometimes a means forward to look at our ancestors and the ways that they problem solved, the ways that they fought oppression, the ways that they struggled, the ways that they celebrated in spite of. It's just such a powerful reminder of the hard things that we've been through, but also the survival, the resilience, the joy that people found in each other and their history and the ways that they sought to remember. I think of history as such a democratic process particularly for Black people, the ways in which we've had to keep our own histories alive. And so I feel honored to be in their tradition and to chronicle the things that they accomplished with much less means than I have. So it's a humbling practice. It's a grounding practice for me, and one that I think provides a path forward for all of us in this country if we were paying close attention.
One of the things that is so evident in your practice and in your approach to this work is the need to lift the complexity and nuance of people's lives. I think often when we think historically, particularly about Black people and the ways that they survived and thrived, is that it becomes these sort of monolithic approaches to people. You bring out the struggle, you bring out joy, you bring out how people celebrated in times and spaces where others did not think they were entitled to it, but they found ways to do that. And so, this newest book, Black Freedom, A Visual History of Juneteenth and Emancipation Days, what then inspires you to create a visual history? Because it's a little different from your past works. And I think it also speaks to a different kind of audience. Why the approach to a visual history?
I think it was, a real question from the press themselves, right? So, to be honest, it's interesting the way that my previous project, Black Folk, and this project, Black Freedom, both are questions that the editors themselves had and wanted answered. And when I was approached by Black Dog about the idea of doing a Juneteenth book, I thought, huh, I don't want to do just Juneteenth. I want to really tie Juneteenth back into the wide tradition of celebrations of freedom, the journey to freedom and emancipation, and the celebrations of emancipation that have gone on around the country. Juneteenth is the most robust tradition because Texans kept it alive and the diaspora of Texans around the country kept it going. But I wanted to tell this wider story, and I knew it would really be hard to find a lot of images, but some of the most evocative images I've seen in my journey as a historian of the Black experience in America have been emancipation pictures that I have just accidentally run into. The very first was an image of Richmond, Virginia in 1905. There's a beautiful march on January 1st that they had. They had a few different emancipation celebrations in Richmond, competing ones. But that January 1st one it is an image of young people at the front, older people in the back. You can see a band down in the crowd. You see the streets festooned. And in the middle of the image, you see a streetcar that's empty. That's because it's happening in the midst of a streetcar boycott that I was writing about at the time. It was my first book, Right to Ride. And so I thought it was so powerful to have a visual representation of the movement of Black people. They are in the midst of a protest movement. They are also remembering the process of freedom. They are also putting on their best and celebrating and playing music. So all of those same streams are happening in that image where you catch that Black life is not this flat thing, this one thing at a time. It is many things at a time. So for me, the visual provides those kinds of opportunities for us to unpack the complexity, the detail, the messiness, the layered nature of the Black experience, and the ways in which it has so much to teach us about the messiness of our own moments and the complexity that we're all dealing with in our daily lives. And so that the process of gathering these images allows you to learn from the photography itself. It becomes a document that is a teaching tool.
I love that you emphasize the word process in talking about freedom. You in the book talk about freedom as a celebration and an unfinished struggle. And I think about so many of the questions that people are grappling with right now about voting rights, for example. And, in my own scholarship, I've spent 20 years telling people it is an unfinished struggle. It will continually be because you are talking about power and freedom and the right to make decisions about yourself and about your journey. But when people think about Juneteenth, yes, it is this robust tradition, but for some people it's almost as if they're just discovering it, or they think that it only affects one place. And why do we need to talk about a journey of freedom when we have these constitutional protections? I'm being intentionally simplistic there. But I
Mhm,
think it
mhm.
is a part of the broader discourse about what do you mean by an unfinished struggle? Share with our listeners how that comes to be central to this theme throughout the book.
So often I think about what it must have been like to be an enslaved person who first gets their freedom, and the process of them really speaking back into the community, into the nation, into their cities where they lived, into the rural areas where they resided, and saying, "Well, what do I want to make of this freedom?" And they had to figure that out for themselves. They had their own vision of it. The country had its version of what it could mean, but their protests, their advocacy, their voices pushed the country forward into a more robust and rich definition of what it meant to be free for all Americans. It's really the first time, as you know, that citizenship is so clearly defined as when emancipation begins its process and affects the way in which the country had to really grapple with what it meant to be a free citizen. We are still dealing in the aftermath of that, as birthright citizenship is being debated in the Supreme Court right now to our own detriment. But it's really a powerful remembrance to know that they are participants in that process. But then within a generation, they are watching the progress of those constitutional protections be washed away. And so they have to get back into the work of preserving and protecting, grappling, negotiating with the wider world about what the meanings of freedom would be. So that there is this continuous stream of struggle that they understood had to be present. And it must have been devastating to move into freedom and then watch it pull backward from the shore. But they're determined to teach the history, determined to be part of the argument. They are not acted upon, they are actors in this process. And so we in our generation have to be encouraged by that. It's pulling away from the shore right now for us. But we have to be actors like our forebears were. We have to keep using our voices to determine what freedom should be.
Coming up, more with Dr. Blair L.M. Kelly, author of Black Freedom, A Visual History of Juneteenth and Emancipation Days. She'll draw parallels between today's struggles and those of previous generations.
The practice of Black history, the practice of celebration, the practice of remembrance and honoring the ancestors was something that the folks before us had to do in opposition to.
And later we hear from one of the organizers of New Haven's Juneteenth celebration. She talks about the power of joy.
So if we walk with joy, that brings resilience. That brings power. That's what Juneteenth is, and that's who we are.
This is Disrupted. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Disrupted. I'm Kalila Brown-Dean. This hour, we're talking about Juneteenth celebrations of the past and present. We've been talking with Dr. Blair L.M. Kelly, President and Director of the National Humanities Center. Her latest book is Black Freedom, A Visual History of Juneteenth and Emancipation Days. Before the break, Professor Kelly discussed what it was like for enslaved people who became free. She spoke of the determination that they later showed in confronting the Jim Crow era. Here's more of our conversation. I often think about that notion of determination in the face of feeling besieged on every side. And of wondering, for some people, it would have been easier to just cede the notion that freedom would never come, that citizenship would never come, or that one would always be in this precarious position. And yet these communities not only remain determined for themselves, but determined to create pathways for those yet to come. You write in the book that often these images around the Jim Crow era only focus on the pain. They don't include the celebration, the creation of institutions within communities that would endure. We are seeing now this resurgence of historically Black colleges and universities and the assaults on those spaces because people understand that education can be freedom and empowerment. There is a smile that warms your face when you talk about discovering images and being able to bring that visual. What was the experience like for you as you uncovered these images of excellence and celebration and determination?
It was its own journey and its own struggle. I had a team of graduate students that I worked with and a photo editor who was trained in oral history and helped me with imagery in my previous book. But we were all looking for single images. There'd be entire archives where we would find a single image. And for a while, we were frustrated. We were stuck at a low number. And it was really difficult. And a reminder that this kind of history was not quickly recorded. It wasn't preserved by most mainstream libraries at the time. Most archives at the time didn't want to preserve Black dignity, did not want to preserve this counter history that Black communities were upholding all along. And so it makes you think about the images that don't exist as I was working on this process. So each and every image that I found was a real gift, a real treasure to see a group of people rounding a bend up a hill in Kentucky, or a man on horseback leading a parade in Canada, or folks barbecuing in pits in Texas. Though each image really made me feel like, oh, wow. Some of my favorites were the flower wagons that I saw all across Texas, where wagon wheels were festooned with fresh flowers, often white flowers, to decorate so beautifully the parades that they were part of. And just seeing those images was a reminder that the care and the beauty and the attention that Black people so often had to put into white spaces in service, they took that day to give to themselves. And so each one of those images, whether some of them were fuzzy or low quality, some of them are richly beautiful and well reproduced, but each one of them was a real gift to me. And as I found them, as my graduate students found them, it was an exciting journey for all of us. And so pulling these images together, which has not been done on this comprehensive scale before, it was a gift to me as a researcher. It was something I got scared about in the middle of it because I was like, are we going to make it? But we did. And, holding it in my hands and having this historic all the way to the contemporary images of celebration of freedom is so meaningful and so rich.
When we were talking about this episode with my production team, and I mentioned to a member of the team, we've come far in some ways from the early celebration at the national level of Juneteenth, when a big box retailer thought that having a branded Juneteenth ice cream would be the way to celebrate. And this member of the team said, no, what are you talking about? It's like, oh, you don't remember this thing? And yet we're at a moment where, as you well know, there is a determined effort to not just retreat from history, but to purposely undermine it, to erase it, and to dictate how people should celebrate their freedom rather than be in a perpetual state of fear. What do you hope that readers take away who encounter this beautiful book, this powerful book, but also in their everyday lives are trying to reconcile that unending struggle for freedom with the right to just be? What do you want readers to take away?
What's been powerful for me is that the practice of Black history, the practice of celebration, the practice of remembrance and honoring the ancestors was something that the folks before us had to do in opposition to. There was no welcome wagon saying, oh, we're so excited you're doing this work. We're so excited you're holding banners high about who fought in the Civil War and what victories they had. There was no one saying, oh, yes, we're so glad you're using this to contest Jim Crow. We're so glad you're using your emancipation celebration to advocate for your local HBCU receiving the resources it needs. There was no one making space. Black people made their space in opposition. Black people made their space anyway. And so we must have that same spirit of anyway. We're going to keep going. We're going to keep doing this work. And, having this book on your coffee table is a way of saying, hey, we're going to celebrate anyway. We're part of a long legacy, and we will continue to know our own history. We will learn those details. We will pass those details down to that next generation. And so I hope this book becomes part of that tradition, that rich practice of saying, we got it, and we will hold it down in the meantime until you get it right, as a country, because we know the stories. We know what our family went through. We know how they migrated and kept these stories alive. I'm going to record my grandmother talking about what she saw as a young person. I'm going to teach my kids and look at some of these pictures with them so that they can understand where they come from. So I hope that this book becomes part of that practice that is more than a century long at this point, and a rich tradition of remembering what freedom really should mean.
My last question to you is about your role as president and director of the National Humanities Center, which is an historic role. But I think particularly in these moments, what it means for you to be in that role as an historian, as someone who has dedicated her entire career to telling these complex stories and telling them in a way that invites people in to understand them more deeply and to interrogate their own stories, as you just mentioned. As you think about this book that you have now released into the world, you think about your role at the National Humanities Center. What is your vision of a path forward as you lead this institution?
I'm really proud to be the first Black woman, the first woman, the first Black person to lead the National Humanities Center. We're a private, endowment-based, donor-supported nonprofit institution here in the Research Triangle Park in North Carolina. And we host fellows from around the world who are humanists, who are writing their own projects and fostering new scholarship about the world. We also have programs for students, for teachers. We do public engagement programming and exhibit work. And so it's a powerful time to be in a private institution that's keeping the humanities alive when it's beleaguered on so many of our traditional campuses, and by the onslaught of the defunding of so many humanities projects around the country on state level and the national levels. And so for me, I want to make a difference as I step into this role. I'm just about to celebrate the end of my first year. And I want to open those doors. I want to continue to facilitate pathways for humanists to do this work of preservation, of storytelling, of teaching, of visioning what's possible when we use the humanities. They matter so much to how we think about the world, to how we approach new problems, how we problem solve. And so it's a gift to be the conduit by which new scholarship can happen. And so I'm excited to sit in the seat at this time. It's a hard and terrible time for so many scholars in this country. And so we're hopeful that our open doors can be meaningful, can be a place of respite and renewal and remaking in this time. And so it fits in that tradition that I write about and that I so richly represent as a Black historian. And I'm glad to have the opportunity to steward this institution in this time. And so I think it fits. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it fits to be an author and an administrator at the same time, but I'm up for the fight.
You are definitely up for the fight, and we are impressed by how you have been able to do both, to be an author, to be an administrator. But I think it speaks to who you are as a person and that calling that you have on your life to be that conduit for knowledge, for community building, and to provide opportunities for others to also pursue that. So we are excited for your leadership and all that is to come. Dr. Blair L. M. Kelly is president and director of the National Humanities Center. Her newest book is Black Freedom, A Visual History of Juneteenth and Emancipation Days. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Coming up, we speak with one of the leaders of a group that's been celebrating Juneteenth in New Haven for over a decade.
It became a city holiday. We were doing it before it was a city holiday. We didn't need permission. We didn't need permission for the first one.
Right.
This is 161 years of Juneteenth.
This is Disrupted. Stay with us. Welcome back to Disrupted. I'm Kalila Brown-Dean. This hour, we're talking about Juneteenth celebrations. Now that we've explored the history of Juneteenth, let's take a look at celebrations happening right here in our state. In New Haven, there will be a full weekend of Juneteenth celebrations, including a jamboree on the New Haven Green. This is the 13th year of those celebrations in New Haven, but as you'll hear, those celebrations have changed over the years. Joining me in studio on the campus of CT State Gateway is Dr. Hanan Hameen, founder of the Artsucation Academy Network and co-founder of the official Juneteenth Coalition of Greater New Haven. Dr. Hameen believes that we don't need to separate art and science. The two are deeply linked. Dr. Hameen has taught dance, traveled across the country, helping people understand and appreciate community and culture, and studied computer science in college. Dr. Hameen, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Before we talk about Juneteenth and the celebration that is coming for New Haven, I want our listeners to know about you because you have such an amazing career stretching across art, culture, education, and community. And that common thread seems to be this love of culture and for people. Tell us a little bit about you and the work that you do more broadly.
So I'm an international arts education and curriculum expert, and that means that I travel different places and I teach teachers. I create programs. I provide professional development training. I participate in cultural exchange because it's always a give and take, the learning process. And I participate in dance and drumming and music and food and everything that is culture. And that's just been my life from how I was born, because that's just what I guess that's the family business. My father being a well-renowned jazz musician, the oldest living jazz musician in Connecticut at 85, Jessie Hameen II. My mother being an award-winning filmmaker with her film in the Smithsonian African American Museum. And that's just what we do.
So the intentionality of saying, I'm going to show up fully as who I am, that yes, I have inherited this legacy through my family of art and love for community, and I'm going to intentionally show up in spaces as my full and authentic self to create space for other people. And to do it in a way that says, I don't have to choose between my love of science and my love of dance. I can create a new way of experiencing it that then resonates with other people. Has that been a challenge for you, or is it just a part of who you are and you do this thing so well?
There's a yes and. Because even though it's something that I love and something that I'm passionate about and something that is just me and how I see the world connected with the arts and the sciences, the challenge lies in trying to get other people to see the connections. And this is where the culture comes in, because the more time I spend with other cultures in their actual, place of origin, on the continent, in the Caribbean, not on a tourist site, like living where they live, eating where they eat, with the people, you see a different way to be. And especially growing up in New York, because me, it's like New York, that's it. Like, forget America, it's all about New York.
Is New York.
It's the world is New York, But then being in New Haven, it's like, oh, there's another way to be. And then going to the continent, I see that, again, there's another way to be. And that's where that intention is coming into play, to bring in the connectedness for everybody to see how their piece is part of the whole, which is, again, mathematics. It's all problem solving and critical thinking and logic and equations at times and understanding relationships. All of that is mathematics. One of my first dance moms, Mama Wilhelmina Taylor, when I was 7, she threw me in the advanced teen class when I was 7. But she said it's because of my analytical skills. She saw how my brain worked. I didn't approach the dance from a movement perspective. I approached it from a mathematics perspective. I'm looking at the patterns. I'm looking at the sequence. I'm looking at the frequency and the dynamics and the relationship between the movement and the drum. I'm looking at the physics of it, not just the physicality. So she saw that. So that connectedness I was just born in it. Because my mother, even though she was a filmmaker, she was pre-med at Howard.
Right.
So it's just there.
Let's talk about a different way of being and how you have used that logic to fit pieces together to create this amazing Juneteenth celebration for Greater New Haven. You are co-founder of the official Juneteenth Coalition of Greater New Haven. That celebration started in 2013. And I think it's important to name that date, because before Juneteenth became commercialized and popularized as people were thinking about what it could mean, you were part of this visioning to say, let's figure out how we bring people together in Connecticut, which has its own sort of space, in New Haven, in a space where people can come together with all the paths that people follow to come to New Haven, whether it's from the South, whether it's from the Caribbean, whether it's from a town over, bringing all those pieces together, frankly, in a space that isn't always welcoming of those pieces of the puzzle. Talk to us about the origins of founding and co-founding that Juneteenth celebration here in New Haven.
Well, it grew into what you described. Because the origin wasn't that. The origin was there was gun violence in New Haven. I came to New Haven in 2012 because of lupus diagnosis in 2010. I was a certified teacher in New York. I was in a wheelchair, couldn't walk, couldn't make it a block, couldn't feed myself, couldn't even lift a glass of water. My mother had to cut up my food like I was a baby, and I'm 30-something years old. But then there's gunshots while I'm laying a few blocks, not too long from far away from the school right now. In the span of like 3 weeks, there were about 3 or 4 young people who passed away, one right across the street, 2 around the corner. So my mother drove me. I had my cane. I go to the Stetson Library. They had a dance party. And I'm like, we got to do something, because there's no way I can sit on my couch when I know I have the solution. Even though I'm in pain, I got up and reached out to the elders, reach out to the community, the people who are already doing something, see what's happening. And so we started Africa's Me at Stetson. African drumming, dancing, teaching the history, all the stuff, all the posters I had in my classroom, laminated them, it's our classroom. We'll be doing it on Saturday, this Saturday on the Green at 1:45 to 2:30 as part of the library's Juneteenth. So we had that. Then at the same time, I'm teaching a neighborhood music school. I'm teaching hip hop, and I also started a professional training program for dancers because I saw that we had a lot of dance places, recital schools, competition. You can go for dance, but if you really wanted to pursue it as a career, there wasn't really anything at that time. So we started the Premier Dance Company. So that created a space for the students, taking them out to perform. Simultaneously, while I'm teaching the hip hop, you had Pete DeGennaro, who was the chair of the rock department at that time, and he was doing his master's thesis, and he was looking into the origins of punk rock, and he saw how hip hop, punk rock kind of grew together. So we had conversations about that. One of my best friends from elementary school, she also moved here. She's a professor at Southern, Dr. Siobhan Carter David, and her son was taking classes there. So we were all just talking about hip hop. We saw New Haven was so close and so far away. So we started the New Haven Hip Hop Conference at Southern. Mary Lou Alesky, who's from Texas, she was the executive director at the time at Arts and Ideas. She saw what we were doing. She saw the arts and the ideas. And she also saw that there wasn't a Juneteenth happening. But she never said she wanted a Juneteenth. So she reached out, she called us to the table and said, we have the green this week, this whole time, and we have space this weekend. Do you want to put the New Haven Hip Hop Conference on the green? I said, yes, and I'll get back to you. Because that's a lot of space for just a conference. And at the same time, Africa's Me was at Stetson. We weren't there alone. We were there with Kids Cook, with Tino Murphy doing the food education. Kids learned how to eat healthy, learn how to cook on a budget, and they got to eat. We had chess with Sport Academy with Ed Trimble and Sean Reeves. We had martial arts with Professor Jahaj Shabazz. And we had my Africa's Me program, and Baba Brian Jaraba Gray did the drumming with us. Plus some of my mentees and assistants and guest teachers and dance family along the way. So we came out together on the green. And Auntie Diane Brown, Stetson Library Manager, she's the co-founder. We came out together on the green. So I said, I'm not going to come, we're coming. So that's what started the Juneteenth. We had one tent on the other side of the flagpole, close to the bus stop. Everybody's coming and grabbing the food. That's supposed to be for the kids, but it's all right, you can eat. And that was our first Juneteenth. So the first intention was just us claiming that space, because that was an auction block. It's also a burial ground, which is why we do the libation, and which is why we are having our commemorative walk at 3:00 on the 19th, led by Mama Jill Snyder, independent researcher. She did research about Lucy and Lois Tritton, the last two enslaved persons to be sold on the green, a mother and daughter. And they were paraded around downtown, slaves for sale, just like what's that show, Games of Shame, Shame. That's what they were paraded around being sold. So we're doing a commemorative walk, and she's leading that. That's going to happen there. So now the intentions are raising the awareness is what we're doing. Now we're at 13 years. You see other Juneteenths have popped up. It became a city holiday. We were doing it before it was a city holiday. We didn't need permission. We didn't need permission for the first one.
Right.
This is 161 years of Juneteenth.
And I think the intention behind reclaiming that space, because I think so many people assume we're in Connecticut. That history is far away. That happened in Texas, or it only happened in the South. And to be able to remind people slavery was right here, the legacies of that. So whether you are talking about what the green has meant, whether you are talking about the ways that people don't feel welcomed in a space, or the ways that you can cleanse and reclaim the space so that it is actually aligned with that vision. But the intentionality also comes in this year's theme of the celebration. Our health is our wealth. You mentioned a little bit about that partnership of helping kids learn how to eat healthy and prepare healthy meals. But you also talked about the fact that you are a lupus warrior. Share with us a little bit about this year's theme. Our health is our wealth.
That is one of our themes. Thank you for pointing that out, because we also have a larger theme, Voices of Belonging. But for the health is wealth piece, we also have a partnership with the Sickle Cell Awareness Association of Connecticut. So on Friday, we're going to be lighting it up red on the green. And especially at night. It's from 7 to 9 p.m. We're going to have our glow sticks, and we're going to light the stage up when we have Sean Langley's outdoor karaoke dance party.
Mm-hmm.
So come out for that and, join us. We're raising awareness for sickle cell because that's something that impacts our community. And June 19th is Sickle Cell Day. Red is also the color of Juneteenth. So it's a perfect partnership. And just also raising awareness in general, just health, not even just what you're consuming as far as nutrition wise. It's also, what are you consuming with your eyes? What are you consuming with your ears? What are you consuming with your hands? What are you consuming in general? So that's why we're intentional with our naming. We have the Juneteenth Jamboree, which is a celebration, a gathering, which is why we have the elder honoring ceremony to make sure that we're uplifting those. So that's why we have our Juneteenth Village and Marketplace, because it's a village. It's a place where you can come and feel safe, where once you walk within our boundaries, the children are safe, they're cared for, they know that you can get support and be supported. Mm-hmm. Our participants in the show are professional service mentors for our artist showcase participants, and they understand that they're in a training. And we have an artist development training program. So the whole space is used for that support. New Alliance Foundation gave us the funding so we can do this and use our programs as a training ground, which they are, because that's the intention we've grown into. It's not just about this 13th. We want to make it to another 13th and 113th, right? So It's about being intentional in understanding that for us to be able to make it there, we have to be able to live for this struggle and not have to struggle, because we don't want to keep struggling. It shouldn't keep being a struggle. It should get easy at some point. And the only way it can get easy is if we collaborate and share our resources and come together and we celebrate what we're doing well, acknowledge what needs to be improved, and teach the youth how to do better, and not just teach them, show them and hold their hand through it, and be open to listening to their feedback, because I grow through them too.
That for me is one of the most beautiful aspects of this work that you are doing. You are curating spaces for cross-generational connection. And I think often people spend so much time talking about young people and talking at young people without taking a step back to listen to them. They know what they need. They are very aware of what's happening around them, and they are building culture and community in ways that may be different for some of us, but is no less important. And the fact that this celebration brings together, honors the elders, does not cast them aside and say, your time is up, now move to the side, but honors them and invest in young people and bringing those pieces together speaks to the beauty of Juneteenth, but also the power of community. I wonder, Doctor, there's a lot of conversation about the 250th anniversary for the United States, the anniversary of democracy, and lots of celebrations across the country, but across the state. And I think celebrating Juneteenth this year is even more important because it's a reminder not just of what has happened, but what needs to happen in order for community to go forward. How do you bring those two things together or sort of reconcile, yes, there's this big national celebration and we need to continue to honor Juneteenth?
That's where our larger theme comes in, Voices of Belonging, because it connects the International Festival of Arts and Ideas theme of belonging and also the National Juneteenth theme of truth. In order to find out the truth, you have to speak. You have to hear your voice. And then whose voice matters? How do you know whose voice is truthful or not? Whose voice belongs? Who can call America home? So we're here to say that through Juneteenth, we are American. Whichever way you slice it, we are American. And we were here before the 250 years, and we will be here after the 250 years. And everything that we've done and continue to do doesn't matter based on who comes on these shores. So when we understand that we are home, and our home is everywhere, because my home is in Africa too. I am that too. It's a yes and. We are Aboriginals here. We are Aboriginals there. We are Aboriginals of this planet. But in terms of America, we are as American as apple pie.
I love the idea because for a lot of people, they see this tension. And I always remember, I've been revisiting James Baldwin a lot this year. And Baldwin said, "I love America more than any other place in this world. And for precisely that reason, I reserve the right to criticize her perpetually." And this idea that it does not make you unpatriotic, or it does not mean that you don't have a love of place, but you get to decide what that place means to you, and it becomes no less than. My last question to you, there are a lot of people struggling right now in different ways. And at the same time, there are many of us who say, yes, and, as you say, yes, and communities are entitled to joy. They're entitled to laugh. They are entitled to dance. They are entitled to just be, however they define that. What's the power of joy in this celebration of Juneteenth?
The power of joy that's freedom. That's freedom of spirit. That's freedom of soul. When you have joy, nothing can stop you. Nothing can tear you down. Nothing. Everything bounces off. So if we walk with joy, that brings resilience. That brings power. That's what Juneteenth is, and that's who we are. Through everything that has happened to our people, no matter what, there was joy. There was a jamboree because we had our village. We kept our connections. We kept our spirit. We kept that mitochondrial DNA. That joy is there, and that's Juneteenth, and that's who we are.
What does it mean for you to be free?
Freedom is choice.
Can't think of any better way to say it. Freedom is choice. Dr. Hanan Hamim is founder of the Artsucation Academy Network and co-founder of the official Juneteenth Coalition of Greater New Haven. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
This episode was produced by Erica McIntosh, Kevin Chang Barnum, and Robin Doyon-Aiken. Meg Fitzgerald is our Senior Manager of Projects and Radio Programming, and our interns are Amanda Adams and Katie Service. You can listen to more than 250 episodes of Disrupted in our archive. You can find us wherever you get your podcast, like Spotify and TuneIn. Just search for Disrupted and Connecticut Public. And if you love an episode, please remember to leave us a comment. From Connecticut Public Radio, this is Disrupted. I'm Kalila Brown-Dean. Thanks for listening.